Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and I'm here with Brother Sage to talk about Shivambu or urine therapy. It's been a hot topic in the Yoga Healer community for the last few months, and I'm sure it will continue to be. So I just want to point everyone from the beginning to brothersage.com and to Shivambu, spelled SHIVAMBHU.org. I'm really thrilled to be able to tap into your depth of wisdom, Brother Sage.
Well, I'm glad to be here with you. I've been doing personal exploration since 1994 with urine therapy. And in the last 6 years, dug so deep in the research that I uncovered not only was there's a whole lot of information, a whole lot of misinformation, but that there are also 30 million people practicing urine therapy in 50 countries.
I heard you say that. I was listening to the conference, the World Conference on that. So where does that number come from?
Well, some of the big chunk of it comes from the Chinese Urine Therapy Association that in 2015 was stating on their websites they had 3 million members.
Okay.
And somebody told me there was 10 million in Germany alone. So we haven't even brought in India. We haven't brought in UK, Australia, South America, Indonesia, a whole lot of countries.
Wow. So I also read that article that China banned urine therapy. Did you see that one?
I did. And it's so ironic because when they try to flip it on the people who are dedicated and devoted to it, the membership increases.
Of course, right? I mean, it's like all press is good press. So for those who don't know anything about urine therapy, will you just start right there with like, how would you define it?
Really simple. After the golden blood plasma, if you guys all know what blood plasma is, it's what is injected into victims by first responders in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. They do the injection version, but what the body does is its version by transferring the filtered blood. At some point, the golden blood plasma goes from the liver to the kidneys. Now, the kidneys, in case you guys got it mixed up, is a filtration system for the blood. It's not an elimination organ. So what's going to happen is this lovely golden blood plasma is going to run through a sophisticated chamber system known as the nephron. And it's not an alien race. These are the nephron, not the Nephilim. It's going to go into the urethra, end up in the bladder, and it's got information and energy encoded. The body comes with information and energy that's been encoded from the original DNA and the cells when your bodies first start getting born. So it knows what a perfect cell is. And at the time you need it, the body has been working hard to get it combined just right. Knock on your door, your bladder says, hey, your medicine's ready, and then it's ready for you.
And when you started, so you were already had a successful wellness practice in Boulder or in Colorado before you started urine therapy. In my experience, like it often takes knowing someone who's doing it, but I'm curious for you, like how did you start?
Well, you mean how I originally started my own personal use of it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it started in 1994, and my two Bibles, my urine therapy Bibles, was The Golden Fountain by Cohen van der Kroon out in Holland, and The Secret of Youthing by Leonard Orr. Well, I was practicing, I was kind of playing with it until I read where Leonard Orr was talking about the Dhamma Tantra and how Shiva taught Parvati how to not only get healed, but also how to be physically immortal. And I had been practicing physical immortality for many years. Well, when it dawned on me that Leonard Orr is a devotee of Shiva, some call Babaji, and Babaji or Shiva tells him to drink his pee, and he tells me to drink a pee, it's almost like Shiva sent a message to me. I go, I'm in. I mean, I didn't have to go through the intellectual process. I just intuitively knew I'm supposed to be on this journey.
Okay. And so when he told you, was that like a personal relationship, or was it a professional relationship, or were you a student, or how did that work?
Well, I've been a student and a friend of Leonard Orr's for many, many years.
Okay.
And I've also been a devotee of Babaji since that time. I mean, Babaji's been with me like some other masters my whole journey. Mm. And so it was a direct link up. Drink your pee, learn the process, and get involved. And I'd heard about urine therapy years before that, but it never made sense to me.
So, and I'm curious about, because that kind of, I learned about it. I'm trying to think, like, because when I went back, it was funny. I went back to my Amazon account, which I didn't even know I had an Amazon account for 20 years. Like I bought my own Perfect Medicine back in like 2001 and I read it, but I didn't know anyone doing it. And what I'm finding in our Yoga Healer course member community is because people are doing it and talking about it, it's really easy for other people to start. Like people that look just like you and me, like really normal looking, like regular, not totally right. And it's like that, it's that sense of like, oh wait, this is in the conversation that I'm involved in, right? It's in the conversations that I'm having, whether it's with a teacher or whether it's for us, it's with course members. Is that what you're finding? Is it like, it just takes like one person that's doing it for someone who's new to it to start?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. It was in 2017, I started getting the download for a book for urine therapy, and it ended up being the Healing Water from Within book. Well, what really set me in motion and got my creative juices flowing was discovering there was over a dozen or two urine therapy Facebook groups. And the talk was all over social media. And the moment I discovered that, I was plugged into the worldwide movement, and I was all of a sudden elevated to this world stage where then my book comes out and I got interviewed on 35 radio shows and 3 television shows, and my whole career just jumped into urine therapy.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing about the here and now. What I'm finding is these very, I was calling them before like elite communities, not in the sense of status, but in the sense of having like a very specific type of dialogue that like one of the tenets of that which is growing right now, like that of the next wave of the economy, especially for creator types, for creators, is like very specific dialogues where people are on a similar vibrational wavelength and are very openly trading expertise and information and know-how with like often with a sense of, it's like to give is to get, right? Like that they're in right relationship with flow. And in urine therapy communities, right? Like there's often a sense especially for people who are isolated and maybe the only person doing this of like, oh my gosh, I'm not totally out there.
No. And what I discovered is that the people who are solid in their urine therapy practice, who have unwavering faith, they're acting like a magnet to all these people who've given up on the medical profession and big pharma, and they're going, help me, I need to find answers to my healing. And boom, people show up in my life left and right, and the word gets out that you're a urine therapist or an educator. Get prepared for doors to be knocked on and people reaching out to you. It just seems to be happening for a lot of people in the community.
So yeah, let's talk about that, because you also wrote the manual for urine therapy teachers and therapists. And I haven't read it yet. I just ordered it. So I would love to, beautiful.
Shiva.
Shiva and Parvati. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about that journey for you with urine therapists.
With other therapists?
With other therapists or being a urine therapist?
Well, being a urine therapist has been an ongoing teaching for me, because I've used the best of all my trainings as a wellness practitioner and as a rebirther and as a Course in Miracles student, and a student of Louise Hay. And I put all these together to be able to read people in a matter of seconds to help them to find their weak points in their belief systems and to change their diets and to change their attitude and get their spiritual practices going. So you have a holistic approach to healing and not just drink your water and that's it.
Yeah.
And you see where people who talk about urine therapy fail their clients is they don't address the 4 pillars of health, which include mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense for me with our members and Body Thrive, where it's like we're doing like the whole community is based on earlier, lighter dinner, early to bed, start the day right, breath body practices, plant-based diet, like these, these rhythms and these rituals that bring a human in sync with circadian rhythm. And because of that, there's such a strong foundation that adding urine therapy was just like, it just kind of like seeped right into like, oh, okay, that's something that it's part of that rhythm and part of that process. And people are having breakthroughs that they were in another way that they weren't having with just the daily rhythm, the dinacharya habits alone. Yeah. And that, and what I've heard from from one of our members who was involved more with urine therapy, but not with the daily habits of yogis, was like that those pillars were missing. And therefore the urine therapy wasn't as effective. So it's really, I so get where you're coming from, and it's an interesting parallel in our career.
And there's also one more counterpart to this equation here, Kate, and I hope people are paying attention here. I had an article published in 2006, and the title of the article was "Your Sacred Live Foods and Your Spiritual Path." I'll even include Shivambu. Your sacred live foods, your spiritual path, and your Shivambu will not save you from your mind. The other counterpart is you have to clear your mind of all unconscious death stuff, self-destructive tendencies, self-hatred, anything that's unkind and unloving to yourself has to go in order for you to up-level and improve the quality of your life.
And so when you're working with, are you training urine therapists? Let me start there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how are you doing that part of the training?
Well, understand, when I wrote the book, I realized that a teacher and a therapist are one and the same. They just wear different hats or call themselves something different.
Yeah.
What we're doing is guiding people along their Shivambu journey by understanding what it is, what the benefits are, how to give general treatment suggestions, and how to have a conversation so that people realize that this is an intuitive medicine. It's an intuitive process, and nobody's going to give an exact formula or recipe for you to do your healing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That whole component of awakening the intuitive body, and how, I mean, my limited experience with urine therapy is that it's really fast. Like, it's a really fast awakening of the intuitive body, especially for people who already have practices like meditation or pranayama breathing practices. Maybe for people who are also already doing things like self-massage or intermittent fasting, where there's just a little bit more connection to self and some space in their mind, or space in their life, that the intuitive body awakens really quickly. And yet still there can be a trigger to look for the formula or the expertise or outside in information.
It takes practice.
Yeah, it's something we work a lot with the yoga health coaches, like how to help people develop their intuition rather than giving them answers. Because people ask questions, and that triggers often, whether they're coming from a wellness pro background or a teacher background, we get a lot of both. It triggers the response of answering a question.
And that can explain why people get to a point in their raw food gurus and in their spiritual gurus, and they hit a point where their belief systems are in conflict with each other. Case in point was Dr. Robert Morse and some other guys who were demonizing urine therapy. And so people were coming up to me and some of the other urine therapists and saying, what's the deal here? This guy was such a guru with fruit. And then he said no to urine therapy. And we said, listen, there are times where you must part ways with your guru and go on your journey alone, because they can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And they're human beings.
Yeah. And they're human beings. Well, and there's an industry. So, I think this is one of the most fascinating components of urine therapy. I mean, there's so many fascinating components, but the consumer to creator shift, right? Because there's the knowledge seeker to intuition seeker shift, and then there's this consumer to creator. And I think one of the experiences, the more, I don't know, I would say dives into the deep end of the gold pool, is that you become that word in yoga, niralambaya, that self-sustaining, that sense of like not needing supports, not needing these limbs of supports, that is a repetitive experience of someone that crosses some thresholds with urine therapy. Do you want to talk about where that goes?
Explain where that goes.
Like that shift from consumerism and consumer mentality to creator mentality, or to, it's not even a mentality. It's more of it's more of like a plane of vibration.
Well, we're moving to self-responsibility when we're talking about self-healing and self-care and doing the work on the inside, or people call the inward journey. And for the folks who are meditating and finding what's known as the still point or 0 point energy, you can calm yourself down by calming your energy down and meditating. And then you'll have a clearer place or a new canvas that you can paint your new painting or create the next phase of your life. And people are so anxious ridden and so scared and so fearful. They're looking outside themselves either for answers or to defend themselves from attack, versus get still enough and it'll come. Your answers will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're rushing about too much these days. We're on energy overload. We're on information overload. And now would be a time to start meditating and getting still. I have been blessed by living in a retreat center on some land that's in the country. And so I've been on retreat since COVID hit last year. I've been on retreat for 1.5 years and loving every minute of it.
Oh, amen. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about just you said you've been doing a lot of research on urine therapy. Like one of the questions that we're getting a lot around, how is there's all this good stuff in urine, including the amino acids, the peptides, the stem cells, growth hormone. How are those molecules? How are those factors or molecules, the immunoglobulins, like how are they getting reabsorbed in a way that the body, like if we're drinking it, how are the gastric juices not breaking it down, or are they? And is skin absorption therefore like such a good route for larger molecules, or how does that whole thing work? Because everyone's talking about stem cells, but when I talk to people outside of the urine therapy community that are more on the biology or the medical side, they're like, your body would break that down before it would reabsorb it.
Well, that is a biological and chemical question of which I'm not trained to answer these questions. I mean, I could stretch and find.
Well, what's your experience of it? Because then there's that, right? There's like the lived experience of rejuvenation, and it's I mean, you either know you're sleeping deeper or not. And if you're sleeping deeper, you may have a sense of like, oh, I'm getting some good melatonin, maybe some good oxytocin if I'm feeling good too. And you have an experience of up-leveling your hormones without necessarily knowing how your body's reabsorbing or getting a feedback loop on that.
Well, that's all in there. When people say what I do about, insomnia, what I do about this condition or that condition. And I could start referencing all kinds of the thousands of components and substrates and individual nutrients in the urine, the melatonin, the serotonin, the oxytocin, DHEA, magnesium, B vitamins, or I could just say, hey, listen, I don't know about all that, but when I drink it and when I apply it topically, I feel better.
Yeah.
And that helps me. And this is what I've been teaching people. We're not doctors. We're not in the big pharma game. So don't put yourself out like that, and just keep it simple. And let people realize, well, maybe you know something that they didn't know. Maybe we figured it out and the doctors didn't figure it out.
Yeah, well, right. And there's different incentives. So with this whole component, I mean, in the yogic text, right, we have these basic, even in the yamas and niyamas, we have these basic precepts around self-study, svadhyaya, right? So sva, self-dhya, is a deep wisdom, right? And that's found from experimentation. To me, is really a much more modern way of saying self-studies. It's like you get this incredible instrument, you get the most phenomenal technology that exists in the universe that we know of, and you get the birthright to experiment with it. And yet we kind of give that away, don't we? And we give it away often pretty early on in life to the beliefs of our culture. And so to wake that back up in people in the sense of okay, now I'm going to rub my pee in my skin, or I'm going to stick my feet in a pee bath, or I'm going to, maybe put a couple drops under my tongue, or I'm going to I'm going to check it out, all the different holes in my body. Okay, right. And there's millions of pores. There's all these different orifices. This is actually funny. I need to redo this tip sheet I made. I've been making these infographic type tip sheets for about 20 years. For Yoga Healer. And I had this one I made years ago called Oil in Orifices, because the yogis and the Vaidyas, or the Ayurvedic doctors, figured out a long time ago that you can put all different sorts of substances in all the different holes of your body. And so I made this little tip sheet that had all your different holes and all the different things you can put in your different holes. But I want to redo it and just put pee on the top. Because
there are 24 protocols that I've come up with all these years. And so being able to have that conversation or to write that up is all about the protocols, because a lot of the newbies who get turned off and they're disgusted about drinking the pee are open to trying it on as a foot soak, or hand wash, or for skin conditions, or sunburns, bug bites, all that stuff. So there's a different way to introduce it to people.
Great. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because there's often a sense too, and what I've noticed is depending on how strong someone's svadhyaya is, where they actually have more of an open canvas and can experience cause and effect without a massive cultural overlay, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that cultural overlay, where they can get some direct data, but otherwise I find that, another group of people, that cultural overlay is so strong that they can't actually tell cause and effect.
Yeah, and let in new info.
Yeah, so take it away.
So first thing I ask people when they come up to me and say, I heard that urine is a disgusting waste product and it should be thrown down the toilet and stay away from it. We wash our hands and blah, blah, blah. I said, first question out of your mouth should be, where did you get that idea? First thing I'm going to do is just challenge them on their source. And they go, well, I heard. I said, you know what? They didn't do their research. Maybe it's time you did your research, because we've got something valuable and special in our bodies, and you just haven't heard about it up until now.
Great. Okay, cool. I mean, and that's kind of funny, because in my Upcycle Your P book, that's kind of what happens, is it goes into challenge of like, let's get down to what this actually is. Let's just start with the facts.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information about urea, which is one of the larger ingredients that has been used for years in skincare products, beauty care products, hair products. They basically use it from pregnant horses' urine. And years ago in Rome and in other countries, they use it for dyes. There's a part of our culture where people were charged, I think it was also in Rome, where they charged people for their urine. They taxed people on their urine. I mean, history is filled with all kinds of things. And I don't know if you'd mentioned it earlier, but a lot of celebrities came forward being videotaped drinking their pee.
The Madonna video that went viral.
Madonna.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's
also have an interview with
video.
Boy George.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Over at the Shivambu hut, we've listed most of these celebrity videos.
Oh, great. Oh, so
you froze, Kate. Come back, Kate. Your show needs you. You are the main voice and the instrument of this movie. Get back here. How could you be frozen and I'm not here? Drink some pee. I suppose there'll be editing to do later, so we get the footage just right, because the guest is not supposed to be monopolizing the screen. Well, there you have it. Kate Stillman and Brother Sage talking psychically. Oh, well, 1 out of 2 is not bad. Let's get both people. And there we have it.
Sorry about that. My power went out.
Not a problem. I just kept talking to you psychically.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Continue.
Well, I've noticed that in the last couple of years, the people who approached me locally that knew that I was a big mouth about urine therapy started coming out of the water closet and going, wow, I'm so glad I met you. I've had to keep this secret from my wife and my husband and my son and my boyfriend, da, 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 da. And I'm so glad. Oh my goodness. And people are showing up all over the place and they're telling me, well, I'm up to 4 ounces a day. I'm up to a pint a day. I've even had friends in other countries that trusted my word and went to the bathroom and came back with their collective pee and drank it, their maiden voyage, in front of a stranger on a camera. So you never know what to expect on this journey.
Well, and so this is my experience with what's happened in Body Thrive and with Yoga Healer, is that like the more people are talking about it, it becomes normal. So that's a change in culture where we're creating our own cultures, right?
Yes.
The more aware we are, and there's a lot of these micro cultures all over the place now. It's like, it's what's disrupted a lot of big business, right? It's like now people can actually connect on a place of interest. So I'm just curious in terms of where you're seeing the trajectory of the of the popularity of urine therapy, or even of like more people actually understanding what's in their pee and what the function of the pee is for the body, and maybe having some historical reference to urine therapy of like how humans have used this over time. Where do you think it's going in terms of like, I would even say like a typical 7th grader having an informed perspective?
An informed perspective. Well, more and more of my students that are mothers are massaging their daughters with urine. One of my new students, she got very excited about it and just embraced urine therapy and jumped on it big time. And then she said, well, her 10-year-old wouldn't drink her own urine, but was open to mom giving her a massage with the urine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're open they're open to it.
I mean, when I look at what happened with yoga, and when I first started, when I was in a yoga teacher training back in the 90s, and like a lot of, like, it was pretty fringe back then. And now it's like most kids are learning some yoga postures at school. There's not a sense that it's like you're worshiping another deity or anything, but that you're doing something that's more oriented towards your body wisdom, your breath, and coordinating movement from breath. Like there's that kind of like basic 7th grade level understanding of yoga. I would say that, like, I mean, I'm surprised that 20 years later that's happened. And I'm wondering if urine therapy will have a similar trajectory, but maybe actually happen a lot faster where, I mean, I'm maybe a little bit on the optimistic, hopeful side.
Oh, no. Did you read my first book? I put in a chapter called The Future of Urine Therapy Movement.
No, talk about it. I think I did, but I was reading a lot at the time.
Well, right now, if you notice some of the things that the Shivambu organization has been producing, like the World Urine Therapy Conference call, we've had as many as 14 to 18 popular urine therapy writers, speakers, and advocates from all kinds of countries jumping on that call. Now, about 3 or 4 years, no, it's 4 years ago, Channel 7 here in Denver, well, I'm in Boulder, but in Denver, Colorado, they heard about our urine therapy meetings in a downtown library. See, we've been teaching people around the world, take this off the internet, because the people who need it won't go to the internet. They don't know about this information. So we were teaching people, and we're about to do this out in a plaza on a popular mall, just host a table and talk about the water of life. So what was happening is that Channel 7 came and did a story on us. Right. So they did a lovely story, and I'm showing the protocols, and I'm drinking, and we're doing a little Tai Chi. They showed my altar. They made it really lovely. Right. Last 30 seconds, they decided to bring out the doctor and demonize the whole story. Well, what they didn't come to expect is that it's had over 40,000 views, and it's been very popular.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So by how many hits and how many views, your show, all my shows, and all the conversations that our teachers are having with each other, like Monica and Tuche just had a lovely talk. It's gaining a popularity, and it's getting more and more acceptance. It's been lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it feels
I see it.
Tip of an iceberg.
We're coming to a tipping point very quickly. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good. I mean, that's really the sense that I've gotten as well. So I'm curious, I mean, one of the things that I think for anyone who starts to use their urine and starts to experience again, like, oh my gosh, what can't I use it for? Holy cow! Like, I mean, it's kind of amazing, and you start to your senses change in relationship to what urine is. Your whole experience of what urine is changes. In our community, like, they picked up on aging urine pretty quickly, and so there's all sorts of experiments going, all over the place, and people are like, the pictures that we're seeing on our forum are different than they were before our whole community went, hog wild. And I can see, well, wow, if like a whole community can go in like pretty fast and really gain traction from each other quickly, wow, that can happen. It can spread not just through people or individuals or families, but it can spread through communities at a much more rapid pace. Now, there's, this whole thing, let's just talk a little bit about the pharmaceutical industry. It's the largest industry in the world. And really what the implications are for someone that is maybe curious and where it goes. Because I know you have a ton of client stories or experimenter stories in your repertoire. And if you would hit on, I mean, you can share whichever stories, but I think for people to hear, of that transition and what really is happening for individuals that might start out as fairly highly medicated or very sick.
Well, let's see. One of the guys who's one of our board of directors, who's also been part of the urine therapy movement since the 1980s, he recently shared a testimonial that's basically said if it wasn't for auto urine therapy, and that he's from South India, him and his wife are from India. And so they call it AUT in India. In America, we may call it urine therapy. I speak about it as Shivambu a lot, but he came forward and said because of urine therapy, he gave up cigarettes and never turned back. He quit his cigarette addiction. All right. And I've met people who got out of wheelchairs and healed multiple sclerosis, have healed diabetes, have healed cancer, have healed all manner of illnesses. And these testimonials are easy to find. They're either in the books or they're on the websites or they're on the Facebook groups.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, I mean, like in John Armstrong's book, it's like they're almost fantastical or the sense of like beyond what one would expect, especially when, especially with urine fasting, like when you take out challenging the physiology in any way and you just allow, I mean, to me, it looks like something around saturation, right? Where you're getting into, I don't know how else to describe it or describe the sensation.
No, I wrote a lot about that in the new book, saturation dosing.
Saturation dosing, and you can feel, and it feels that way, and it feels intuitive, and it feels vibrationally like, oh yeah, this is another vibrational state, in a state in which disease seems to be detoxified from the body. I mean, in Ayurveda, I feel like Ayurveda, I've been somewhat disappointed, I got to say, in reaching out to a lot of my Ayurvedic colleagues. Back in 2015, I put on the Ayurveda Summit with one of my colleagues, Dr. Eric Grasser, and we interviewed the who's who in the Ayurveda doctor world. And so I've been, reaching out and, like who knows what about this? Because Ayurveda has such a fascinating, just language, right? It has a very developed language around physiology and subtle physiology. That's hard to find. It's definitely impossible to find in English, but it's often hard to find in a lot of other languages. And this understanding of what is inflammation in the body. If we look at inflammation, if we look at, say, even in 2020, the World Health Organization said chronic systemic inflammation is the #1 killer on the planet. It's expected to increase significantly over the next 30 years. It's chronic systemic inflammation is responsible for the top 5 disease categories.
And they'll never tell you to stop eating dairy and meat, because you can tell who bought them off.
Or meditate, or or drink urine, or any of it. But if we look at Ayurveda, right, we've got this concept of ama, and ama is that which is not digested. It's a pretty broad concept of that which isn't digested, and it can fall under physical, mental, emotional categories. And so if we look at what the urine seems to do is it seems to have a process of digesting. It seems to have a process of being able to find that which is, and so let me back up. So the ama, that which is undigested, seems to, when it's in the body, it then generates an inflammatory response, because the body's like, we've got to get this out. We've got to localize it, and we've got to try to remove it. And so it has an inflammatory response when the inputs for that which is not being digested, whether it's too much on the mind or too much in the body, or that which the body can't digest, is too much, and it's happening chronically. So the urine seems to to me, it seems to have a component of Agni, or fire, and that's where you can see the gold color of it, right? It has, and it potentizes with age. But it also has a property which is so intrinsically opposite, which is nourishment, or that which nourishes the rasa dhatu, or the plasma of the body. It's like in Sanskrit, it would be ahara, would be the precursor to ahara rasa, which forms the plasma. So it'd be like ahara rasa. So to me, it was fascinating. Like Ayurveda has and yoga has such this phenomenal language to explain how urine therapy actually works. I would say much better than English. And yet, these conversations don't seem to be happening in the yoga teacher trainings or in the Ayurvedic practitioner trainings.
Right. And the people who are fasting, a lot of them are saying, you know what? This will end hunger. This will end thirst. This will end dehydration. And it'll change a whole lot. It's a major game changer when people don't have to think about, wow, I missed a meal, or I'm deficient in some kind of nutrient. No, this is my go-to for everything. Whether an external burn, a cut, a sore, a bite, a bee sting, sunburn. I go out to this clothing optional hot springs place with my friends. They're slathering on SP34, right? And then they come back to me 2 hours later complaining about their sunburn pain. And I've already told them, look, I just put urine all over my body. The sting's gone in 10 minutes and I have another lovely tan. So work that out, guys.
Yeah, right. So it's leading by example and sharing information.
Now, about 4 weeks ago, we have where I'm living in Sanctuary Garden, we have outdoor fires and drum circles and potlucks and all kinds of community gatherings. Well, this last time, I would say about 8 out of 16 of them, 8 out of 16 of the attendees were either my urine therapy students or people heard about me who were curious and said, I want to know, tell me more. And boy, what a joyful night that was for me, because I was talking about urine therapy everywhere I turned.
And are you finding more and more that that's what's happening around you, is people are hungry for the information?
Yeah, when people call me the pee guy, I smile. Go see Sage. He's the pee guy. Okay, let's talk.
So,
and I'm glad I had to bring, Kate, I had to bring that up. And this is right. I wrote a chapter on humor in this book. I came up with
puns. You have so many puns.
The piscabulary of urinisms is located nowhere on the planet except in this book. And the reason being is, if you're going to talk about a controversial subject that polarizes people, you might as well have a good time. So we do all the time, tell jokes on the social media groups.
It just came up in for our Upcycle Your Pee book. We just had a meeting on that with a bunch of us that are putting it together, and I was saying, oh, bring everyone into the Slack group and we'll have a chat so we can get input, and we're going to run it through a few editions before we officially publish it. And they're like, oh, it'll be the peanut gallery.
Very nice. Well, I want to get my hands on that book. There's a lot of people who want to see that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. And then the wizards, the wizards whizzing. It's just so fun. It is so fun to talk about. So with, you just mentioned a little bit about like the divisive nature of pee, and it seems to me like it's pretty culturally conditioned or societally conditioned, and for people that are not rule breakers or are pretty, I would say, higher in Western psychology, or higher in conscientiousness and lower in openness, can have a lot of barriers to doing something like this, even though it's free, even though there seems to be an endless supply, even though everyone pees in private, so like you don't really need to tell anybody if you're worried about that. How does someone like that, like, what is your experience in like someone like breaking down some of those? You mentioned the protocols before. Like, what are you finding? One of the things that I found is like sleep. Like, so many people have trouble sleeping and they'll almost do anything to get a good night's sleep. But I'm curious what you found. Well,
I found all kinds of things that people are telling me they're sleeping better, their brain is working better, their energy level is better.
Over that hump, like someone who's not that high in openness and is like,
I love baby stepping these people. The first thing you want to do is have them collect some pee and put a finger in it like a pinky, right? And then notice you didn't get sick and you didn't die. So what we're doing is, Kate, we're creating a new neural pathway to the mind, so it overrides the old programming, so a new program takes its place. We go from touching it to actually putting a dropper of it under the tongue, just a drop of it, and then to a whole dropper, to an ounce, and we step them up until they get it.
Okay. Yep. I mean, that makes so much sense. Like in India, people eat with their hands. Like, it's very, in Ayurveda, it's very much taught that like digestion begins with the hands. It doesn't begin with the tongue. It doesn't begin with the saliva. It begins with your hands touching the food, connects that this is coming in to the body. It's starting to create that circuit of this is nourishment. So I love that. Just start with touching.
Just touch it and notice you're okay.
And notice you're okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. We're creating a safety net for the mind.
Any tips for the advanced, like people that, because there's going to be people listening here who want like your insider advanced UT, advanced AUT. Yeah. Talk to those people for a minute.
Okay, let's get some of the wisdom, Shivambu wisdom. I made a chart if anybody wants to see it. It's a giveaway. Number one, Shivambu alkalizes anything it touches. Let me explain. People will ask you, well, if I'm gargling urine in my mouth because I have some kind of bacteria on my tongue or my gums or my lip, and they're trying to get all the bad bacteria out, and they say, well, shouldn't you just spit it out afterwards? I said, listen closely. Shivambu alchemizes anything it touches. It will neutralize it and lift it up to match the vibration of the Shivambu. Swallow it.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, it's an intuitive medicine. Mm-hmm. It will guide you. It will time it out for you. It'll lead you to when to use it topically, orally. It's intuitive medicine. Number three, Shivambu works. It's so powerful. It works regardless of your mindset about it, whether it's the same race, the same gender, the same age, or whether you drink it from a healthy person or a sick person. It's even stronger than plastic. When people say, was it okay if I leave it in plastic? It's stronger than plastic. It's stronger than your fear, your concerns about it. And the last thing is, it's your gift. Do with it what you will.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we had a chance to meet. I'm sure we'll meet again. I'm sure we'll meet at some point. We're not that far away from each other. So that's super exciting.
Me too. And yeah. I want you guys to get over the Shivambu Hut. Shivambu Hut is a social media platform that has been designed just for urine therapy conversation, the urine therapy movement. People can talk about the subject, they can add content, they can learn from what's already been posted, and they can stand up for each other when someone needs someone stronger than them, and you need to be able to talk something through. There's been a lot of people that have been coaching each other there as well. And that's
it's beautiful. And that's on a Mighty Network site. So it's so great. It's beautiful to use. Yeah. Thanks for setting that up. That's fantastic.
We got some great people behind us that are the webmasters and the board of directors that are making it work out.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to have you back to talk to the yoga health coaches about adding urine therapy to what they can offer their course members. And so I'm sure if you have the time, we'll talk again.
It would be pistastic, and I would be honored to pee among these people so everybody could pee themselves in each other's company.
Oh, fantastic.